All right, tokenomics and token distribution. To cover this, we'll first go to coinmarketcap.com because it's the best place to start analyzing crypto projects. For tokenomics, we'll be covering these numbers mainly. But before I do that, let me explain how this website actually works because it's very important. So to get listed on CMC and get a dedicated page like this, you have to go through a light due diligence process. And once you get listed, you will get an admin panel to control all this information. So on CMC, you will notice 3 types of different project pages. One looking like this, usually for popular projects where there are no warning signs, plenty of information about the project, right? This is usually for popular projects. And then a page looking like this. This is still a dedicated page, but there are some warning signs. And there is not much information available. So regarding these warning signs, so once you get this admin panel, when it comes to tokenomics, you have to report your tokenomics in a transparent way. The way you can do it is you have to configure a way to aggregate all the information related to your circulating supply of the tokens, token allocation, etc. You have to basically gather all that information in one place and then fetch that information to CMC via APIs. And then the CMC team checks that information and then they lift these warning signs. And then that information is constantly updated via APIs. In this case, if the team chose to report it themselves, they have to constantly update this information, right? So this doesn't mean that the team is lying. It just means that there is no way for you to verify if this information is correct. So they could be lying. You just don't know, or they could be just telling the truth, right? So it's something to consider. And then finally, we get a page like this, where this is not a dedicated page. This is basically on-chain information taken from a decentralized exchange where this token is trading. So in this case, from Radium, which is a Solana native exchange. So with these tokens, you have to be super careful because, again, as you can see here, DeepSeek is not verified by this CMC team. So there is just no way for you to check if this project is a legitimate project unless you do your own, research. If the project is a half decent project, it should be listed here. If it's not listed here, it's either super new, just launched, or it's basically unable to provide some basic information so the CMC team can verify the project and list it here, right? So again, you have to be very careful when it comes to these projects. Even though it says here for security scans it's safe, but it doesn't mean that this project is safe because you never know how much of the token supply is actually owned by the team, and if they are selling, they are not selling. So it's very tricky and super risky. And you can just copy this contract address. If you have contract address, you can just copy it, and then once you just insert it here, it should appear, right? Again, this is not a dedicated page. Don't be confused by that. So yeah, these are 3 types of pages you get. Now back to the XRP case, so we can explain these token metrics here. Just quickly, if you're confused about coins and tokens, coins, they have their own blockchain, for example, Solana, XRP, Ethereum, Bitcoin. Tokens, they don't have their blockchains. They are built on coins blockchains. For example, if you launch a Memecoin on Ethereum, it's actually a token, right? So that's the difference between coins and tokens. But for the sake of this video, I will just stick to tokens as a term. Circulating supply. It simply refers to the amount of coins or tokens that are circulating in the market and are in public hands. Now, you may ask how tokens are added into circulation, right? So how this number gets bigger. Well, we need to understand the token launches first. So there are 2 types of token launches. You can either the fair launch or pre-mined token launch. In case of fair launch, users are getting rewarded for contributing to the network. For example, if you're mining Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a fair lunch project. If you're mining Bitcoin, you're contributing to the network with your compute power and being rewarded for that. It's kind of similar case for Ethereum. So that's fair lunch. Although we know that there will be only 21 million Bitcoins, some of that is still being mined, right? In case of pre-mined tokens, you mine, well, the team mines 100% of the tokens in advance, and then some of that is usually sold to VCs, private investors. The team keeps another big chunk of those tokens, right? And then when the public launch happens, so the token gets traded publicly on exchanges, then the team and the private investors, they start selling the tokens into the market, thus increasing the circulating supply. So that's how it gets bigger and bigger usually, and then until it reaches the maximum supply, or total supply rather, right? So that's how it works. I will actually cover all that in depth in just a bit. I just wanted to give you a quick overview before we do that. Okay, so what is maximum supply? Basically the maximum amount of coins that will ever exist in the lifetime of the currency. Pretty straightforward, right? Some projects, they don't have maximum supply. For example, Ethereum doesn't have maximum supply. It could be a red flag depending on the case. For example, in the case of Ethereum, although it doesn't have maximum supply, it's deflationary. So you have to research a project to better understand if there are any sort of deflationary burn mechanisms, so they don't just keep printing more tokens, thus creating more and more sell pressure, right? And then we have total supply, which basically equals to total coins created minus coins that have been burned, if any. So in case of XRP, we have 100 billion max supply, but the total supply equals to 99.98, right? And then we have FDV, fully diluted valuation, or fully diluted market cap. It's basically the price of the asset multiplied by the maximum supply. So we have the current price of the asset multiplied by max supply. And then market cap is it basically equals to the current price multiplied by the circulating supply. So if you multiply the price with circulating supply, we end up with the market cap, right? Actual market cap and the FTV are very important to understand if the project is overvalued or not. Sometimes these valuations get crazy. For example, again, you may see something like 10 million market cap here and then a billion FDV here, but the volume is, which is another important indicator, the volume is like a million or two, right? Or just in tens of thousands of dollars instead of being in tens of millions of dollars usually, right? So in this case, it's really a big volume, right, for this project. So if you see those kinds of numbers, you have to pause and do more research. And you can also see here where that volume is coming from. So if you just go to the markets here, you can see, for example, in this case, you see $108 million coming from this pair, 5 million coming from this pair, and from, you know, from all these exchanges. Sometimes you see some weird exchanges here with huge volume. Some exchanges are doing a lot of wash trading, so the volume can be faked as well. So we'll actually talk about all that later in the exchanges section. So yeah, these numbers are very important to understand. Now, I think next we need to talk about token allocation and distribution. Again, like these are all very important topics, so we'll discuss all of them. To better understand token allocation and distribution, first we need to understand the initial token sales or initial coin offerings. They are basically the same thing. This website is called ICO Drops, and they basically preserve the initial token sale information for crypto projects. Projects, when they launch their token, they usually get rid of this information because it's not attractive to public retail investors, especially if they sold their tokens 10 times, 20 times cheaper to private investors or VCs, right? So this website is a great place to sort of research the inception of a project, right? So we'll go over an example of a token allocation here on this website, and then also we'll sort of take a look at some of the meme coins, Melania's meme coin, Trump's meme coin, and then I'll share an Excel sheet with tokenomics with much more detail, so everything in one place, so you can better understand all these numbers, because all these numbers, they actually work together. So so yeah, let's go. So we'll start with just the project here, just the first one. And if you scroll down, we have more information on the token distribution, right? Before I go over these numbers, let me explain what some of the terms here mean. So cliff is basically once you launch your token, you have a lock period for the token. For example, here, if you go with the public pre-sale, 35% is sold to public, right? And then 10% is unlocked at TG, token generation event, basically the token launch. And then there is a 1 month cliff, which means tokens will be locked for 1 month. And then the rest of the tokens, 90% vested between 6 to 14 months, depending on the round of purchase, right? So they had multiple rounds of token sale, and for each round, these numbers vary, right? So that's what it means. So again, basically, in this case, if you were to participate in public pre-sale, let's say you invested $1,000 in this token. So 10% of that would be unlocked at the public launch of the token. So you can just sell the token and take your profits or not. It's up to you. You have the full control of the token. And then for 1 month after that, after the launch, you will receive 0 tokens because the tokens are locked. So that's why it's called cliff. And then the remaining 90%, depending on the schedule, let's say it's 12 months, you will get the remaining tokens for the 12 months. So it's, let's say, $900 divided by 12, that's $75. So you will get basically $75 worth of tokens every month for the next 12 months until 100% of the tokens you purchased are unlocked. So that's how this works. So you have, again, you have the unlocks at TG, cliff, and then you have the vesting schedule, right? So this is how it usually works. It's completely up to the team to predetermine a certain plan for the vesting allocation, right? It's completely up to them. And if you choose to participate in a pre-sale of that token, you have to accept those terms. That's why you have to take a look and understand the vesting schedule, basically to understand what you're getting yourself into. So if we are to analyze further here, there are some glaring issues with these tokenomics, with this allocation. So they say it's 12% for centralized and decentralized exchanges liquidity. Unlocked, 100% is unlocked at TG. And then you have public pre-sale, team advisors, 7%. And then you have treasury, 16%. But the problem with this is it's basically the same thing. Like, this is team, right? Treasury is controlled by the team. Ecosystem growth is controlled by the team. And they unlock 20% of that at TG. These are actually huge red flags. So if you take a look at this, only 35% is sold to public. And then the remaining 65% is controlled by the team, because all these are actually controlled by the team. So ecosystem, treasury, marketing, and community incentives. And you unlock 20% of that. That's crazy. Like, if you just add up these numbers, you give too much control to the team over the tokens. So they can actually sell these tokens and claim that they they actually spent it on some sort of community incentives or marketing, or they had some sort of partnership. So they can claim they had these and basically sell these tokens at any given time. If you take a look at these numbers, at the first glance, it may not look that bad, but if you actually analyze all that, you understand that the team actually has a lot of control over these numbers. And I mentioned earlier, on CoinMarketCap, you see these warning signs, right? Because the team is self-reporting the circulating supply. So it's completely up to this team to play with those numbers, and you will not even understand if they are actually reporting the correct numbers, or the whole thing is a fake, right? So yeah, you have to be very careful over these numbers. Although they look naive at the first glance, once you take a deeper look, you understand that that's not the case, right? Now let's go to Melania's Memecoin, and it's much worse. It's much worse. So they have their token distribution. Team is getting 35%, which is a huge number. And then they have treasury also. So it's basically 55% for the team. Community, 20%. I don't know what that means exactly, like if they have any sort of plan for community incentives or not. And then liquidity, 10%, public distribution, 15%. So in this case, the team controls 75% of the token supply. With liquidity, actually, it's 85% of the token supply, right? So they control 85% of the token supply, and it gets worse because you have initial lock period, so 1 month cliff here, right? Day 1, day 30, initial lock period. And then 10% of the team allocation is unlocked. So you get immediately 10% of this being unlocked. So you need to expect a huge price dump around what, February 18th or 19th, right? And then the rest is unlocked between 2nd and 13th. So basically 1 year, right? Within 1 year, the 90% of the remaining tokens are unlocked. So this is very bad if you're an investor in this token, because I mean, you have again 85% of the team control over the tokens. The vesting schedule is terrible because you get 10% unlocked right after a month, and then the remaining is just also crazy because 1 year for 90% of the tokens being unlocked is also crazy. So again, this is why it's very important to understand these numbers before you invest in any of the crypto tokens. And if we just take a look at Trump here, it's slightly better than Melania's Tokenomics, but still really bad, because now here you have total emission duration 36 months. Okay, but if you take a look here, basically 80% of the tokens are directly owned by the team, which is creators and CIC Digital, right? 80% is owned by them, and then you have liquidity and then public distribution. So with liquidity, they actually control 90% of the tokens. And when it comes to the vesting schedule, they have 0 unlocks at TG at the public launch, and then 3 months cliff, and then 10% is unlocked right after that. So around, I guess, 18th of April, around that time. So 3 months after the token launch, expect a huge price dump. And then the remaining 90% is unlocked within 24 months. And it's kind of similar for the other baskets here they have. So yeah, it's quite bad, but despite that, you see these crazy valuations, right? So you see market cap being almost 400 million, fully diluted value being 2 billion, Earlier I mentioned that sometimes there are huge gaps between these numbers, but in this case it's much worse because you see out of the 1 billion, almost 1 billion total supply, around 17% is unlocked only, which means that, again, the remaining 83% will be dumped on the market within the next year, right? And that's just gonna create a huge selling pressure for this token, right? So again, that's why it's very important to understand these metrics. Now I'm going to go to the Excel sheet and kind of aggregate all those numbers together so you have a full picture of all these tokenomics working together. Here is an imaginary tokenomics I made a while ago, and if you pause, you can see all the things that we've discussed so far basically in one place. So we have total token supply here. We have token distribution, sold to investors, seed sale, private sale, and public sale rounds. We have team control tokens, foundation, ecosystem growth, liquidity, and staking. We have token information here, right? We have fully diluted valuation. We have total token sale percentages. We have seed sale discounts, private sale discounts. We have initial market caps for seed, private, and public sales. We have fully diluted valuations for each round, right? And here we are trying to raise 5.7 million around that mark with seed, private, and public sales. And you can see the token prices. So you see it's 30 cents for seed sale, 60 cents for private sale, and 80 cents for public sale, right? And then you see the percentages released at TG. So we have TG market cap without liquidity, and then we have TG market cap with liquidity. And then you can see the lockups and vesting. So for seed, it's 4% within 10 days after the TG, and then 120 days cliff, then daily vesting for 32 months. Because the seed investors are getting it at a cheaper price, they have a longer vesting period. And then for private, it's slightly better. And then for public, it's much better because they don't have any discounts for the price of the token. So this is how it's supposed to work based on this logic. And if you noticed, we have only 25% unlock for liquidity at TGE. And the reasoning behind this is you don't actually need 100% unlock for 10% of your token supply. Because you don't need that much unless you're listing on some of the top exchanges like Binance and Coinbase. That's why when I see like 10% and 12% liquidity is unlocked, like completely unlocked, like 100% unlocked, then that means the team has full control and a much bigger room to sell some of those tokens to you, right? Which creates a bigger sell pressure. So that's something you have to be careful about because you see that a lot, right? I gave you a couple of examples already. And on the next page here, I have emission schedule, basically the vesting schedule illustrated. So we have cliffs here. So it was a long time ago. It was back in 2023. So you see the cliffs for seed here, right? And then you see cliffs for private sale, for public sale, right? And then you see the token unlocks, the amount of tokens that would be unlocked per each month, right? It basically helps you to visualize how much of your token supply will be unlocked over time, right? And then we have here a graph also that illustrates that. So as you can see here, most of the sell pressure will be around August and October here, right? That's the peak of sell pressure, and then it's gonna get declined over time. As a team, this is one of the most important documents you need to work on to calculate all these numbers and come up with a plan to minimize the sell pressure over time. And as a team, you should actually go a step forward and try to simulate your tokenomics prior to your token launch. For example, here's a video I made a while ago trying to understand what happens to the token price when the unlocks happen and what to expect in different scenarios, right? So this is on Machinations. It's a great tool to, again, to simulate your tokenomics prior to your token launch. But it's a much more complex model. You need to have some understanding of how this tool works. Now let's go back to the token sell prices and see what happens if you sell your token to VCs, to private investors at a fraction of the public launch price. So in our example, we have seed sell price being only 30 cents, so we have 62% discount from the public sale, right? Which is a very conservative number considering the long vesting schedule for the seed sale and also the huge risks involved with a project, right? So they have to be the early trusting people to actually give this project a chance, so right? So it's a very conservative number, and by the way, these tokenomics are far from being perfect, so don't take them seriously. It's just a draft, right? Now, what happens if the discount is much bigger? Enter ICP, Internet Computer. Did you know that the private sale price for early investors was only 3.6 cents, right? You see, the seed round investors paid only 3.6 cents. And the launch price for ICP was $630 in its debut on Coinbase, and it was around $3,000 on Binance. If we were to go even with $630, that means a pre-sale investor that paid 3.6 cents per token has made 17,500x on his investment. 17,500x. So if he invested $1, he would have gotten $17,500, which is insane. So you see how this works? And that's why you have a graph looking like this. Because these investors who have paid cents per token, they've been selling all this time, bringing the price down, right? Because no matter what the price is here, if it's above 4 cents, they are profitable. They made 1,000 times more money than they invested. So this is how the game is being played. As a retail investor, you are at a much bigger disadvantage than these VCs and private investors, right? So that's something you have to always consider and understand about vesting schedules, token unlocks, private sale prices, which is again information that is not always publicly available. You have to do some digging to understand all this. Also on CMC, if you go to cryptocurrencies tab, token unlocks, you can see the tokens that have unlocks coming soon. For example, BTT has an unlock coming in about 7 hours and 42 minutes. And you can see the amount of the tokens that will be unlocked is 1.8% in this case. I believe most of the currencies on CMC are reporting this via their admin panel, but I don't think you will find every project here in this list. So that's why it's much better to actually investigate those projects and see the tokenomics of those projects. So you have a much more detailed information regarding their vesting schedule. Now let's talk about token burning. Token burning is a process of permanently removing tokens from circulation. It's a deflationary strategy to tackle inflation that's happening over time. Now there are two foundational levels that you can do this at. First, the most simple and the most widespread option is just sending the tokens you want to burn to a burn address. Burn address is an address that you cannot retrieve the tokens from because no one has the access to that address. No one has the private keys to that address. You just send the tokens you want to burn to that address and they are gone, right? So that's the most simple option, and that's mostly used by different meme coins or scams. It is also used by some decent projects too, right? Don't get me wrong. And then the second option is just creating this burn mechanism within the smart contract, within the code itself, within the algorithm, right? So it's kind of more deeply engraved option. And here, for example, on this website, we can see the deflationary mechanism, the burn rate of Ethereum, and we can see how much Ethereum is burned so far. So over 5 million Ethereum was already burned, and you can see the burn rate per hour. So Ethereum implemented in 2021, they implemented this new mechanism to tackle inflation. Now, as you can see here in the current ETH emission, Ethereum is in the minus area, meaning the supply is actually being reduced, right? And then there are other websites too you can check. For example, in this is another website. You can see, for example, for this coin, you have 44% tokens already burned, and then 61%. But I wouldn't care much about these meme coins, to be honest, because they don't even, they don't hold any actual value. So even though they burned like 99% of their token supply, it wouldn't mean anything, in a sense that their actual value is basically zero. They don't contribute anything to the ecosystem. So them coming forward and saying that, oh, we are burning 50% of our token supply, buy our token. Why? There is simply no reason to do that. So I wouldn't care much about these coins, and just focus on some decent projects and see their burn mechanism. Also, just to deep dive on this, there's a great article here explaining the different mechanisms projects are using. For example, in the Ethereum case, they are burning the transaction fees, thus reducing the supply of the Ethereum, right? And then, for example, in the case of Binance Coin, they are burning Binance token on the quarterly profits, making less predictable than Ethereum's mechanism. Burn schedule depends on the Binance quarterly profits, right? So it's a kind of, they tied it to the Binance itself. And then for Cardano, they don't actually have any decent burning strategy. So it continues to create coins without burning strategy, right? Solana, no formal burn, focus on speed, right? So a lot of big projects, they don't actually have burn schedules. Some of them do, some of them don't. It really depends on the strategy they are implementing to maximize the use of their blockchains, also to reward their miners, because, for example, in case of Ethereum, even though they implemented this mechanism and Ethereum became deflationary, a lot of miners, they started complaining because they weren't receiving enough incentives to mine Ethereum, right? So as a team, it's something you need to think a lot about to understand the pros and cons of implementing such a mechanism. Just because there's a burn mechanism, it doesn't mean the project is great. That's all I'm trying to say.